Welcome to Thoughts on Investing. Today, we're diving deep into a fascinating company, Grab Holdings, the absolute powerhouse super app of Southeast Asia. This company has had such a wild history, from a massively hyped IPO that just completely fell apart to where it is today, a genuinely profitable, growing business. We're going to unpack that whole story.
Okay, but before we get into all of that, just the standard reminder here. This is all for educational purposes. It is not financial advice. You've always got to do your own homework before making any investment decisions. All right, let's do it.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the incredible turnaround in Grab's actual business. Then, we're going to pull up the charts and see what the price action is telling us. After that, we'll put those two pieces together, build the investment case, look at the risks, and then wrap it all up with a final thought.
The story of Grab is really a tale of two completely different companies. On one hand, you had the insane IPO hype stock that shot up to almost $18 a share before absolutely cratering. But what's risen from those ashes is something else entirely, a real, profitable growth platform. And understanding that transformation is what this is all about.
So let's kick things off with part one, the super app turnaround. This is where we look at the nuts and bolts of how Grab went from just burning through mountains of cash to becoming a legitimate profit engine.
Let's start with the top line. We're looking at projections for 2025 annual revenue to hit around $3.37 billion. Now that's up about 20% year over year. So you can see the scale of this thing is still expanding at a really healthy clip. But honestly, this is the number that completely flips the script for Grab. In 2025, the company is expected to post its first ever full-year net profit, to the tune of about $200 million. I mean, this is the milestone. This is what proves the whole business model actually works and can be profitable at scale. It's a huge deal.
And what's the engine driving all this? Well, it's over 50 million people. 50 million plus users who are using the Grab app every single month to make some kind of transaction. This massive, engaged user base is the absolute bedrock of their entire ecosystem.
And that brings us to this idea of a super app. So what does that even mean? Well, think of it like this. It's not just an app for getting a ride or ordering food. It's a whole ecosystem right in your pocket. You've got digital payments, financial products, and a ton more. This model creates what we call a sticky user base, because it's woven into so many different parts of your day-to-day life. It's really hard to leave.
Okay, so the business fundamentals are clearly turning the corner. But what does the stock chart look like? Let's switch gears and look at the technicals. We're calling this the chart's foundation, because it's really a story of a stock that's been patiently rebuilding itself from the absolute ground up.
Man, the stock's journey has been an absolute roller coaster. You had the massive IPO hype back in 2021, where it peaked around $18. Then came the crash, a brutal fall all the way down to about $2 in 2022. But look at this. For years now, from 2022 through 2025, it's just been patiently building a solid base, bouncing between $2 and $4. So the big question now is, what's the next chapter in 2026?
When you pull up the weekly chart, you really get the big picture. I mean, you can just see that catastrophic 90% drop from the peak. But the most important part of this chart is what happened next. For years, the stock has been carving out this long, wide base. In technical terms, this is often called an accumulation phase, and it's where you see long-term investors just patiently buying up shares, setting the stage for what could be a major new uptrend.
Now, let's zoom into the daily chart. When we do this, something really constructive starts to stand out. You see this clear ascending trend line? Notice how every few months the price comes down, touches this line, and finds support. This pattern of higher lows is a classic bullish sign. It tells you that every time the stock pulls back, buyers are stepping in at a slightly higher price than before. That is exactly the kind of behavior you want to see in a stock that's trying to start a new uptrend.
So let's put it all together. You have a business that is finally turning profitable, and you have a stock chart that's showing some real signs of life after a long time in the penalty box. In this next section, we're going to combine those two views to really build out the investment case and understand why this story is getting so interesting right now.
So the bull case really rests on a few powerful pillars. First, and this is the big one, profitability is no longer some what-if scenario. It's actually happening. Second, remember, this isn't just a one-trick pony. It's a diversified super app ecosystem. Third, the market it operates in, Southeast Asia, is absolutely massive and still has a ton of room to grow. And finally, the company's financials are strong enough that they're now buying back their own stock, and you've got this potential for Wall Street to wake up and start valuing the company at a much, much higher multiple.
But hey,
let's be real. No investment is a sure thing. To get a balanced picture, we have to look at the other side of the coin. So let's talk about the key risks you need to be watching very closely here.
The bear case definitely has some teeth. You've got governments that could put pressure on the commissions Grab is allowed to charge. The competition from rivals like GoTo is absolutely fierce, and they're not going away. And yeah, if you look at some valuation metrics, the stock still isn't exactly cheap. And of course, if the broader economy weakens, that could put a real dent in consumer spending, which would hit Grab directly.
All right, let's bring it all home with the final thesis. This is really where our two lenses, the fundamental story of a profitable, growing company and the technical story of a stock building a long-term base, finally start to converge.
So I think the main takeaway is this. Grab is no longer that $18 IPO hype stock. That version of the company is dead and gone. What we have now is a rebuilt, profitable growth platform. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question. You know, they say some of the biggest investment opportunities show up only after all the initial hype has died down. So for Grab, is the real story just getting started?
Hey, if you enjoyed this breakdown and got some value out of it, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives just like this one. Thanks for watching.